Mr. West, would you raise your right hand? Do you solemnly state the evidence you shall give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Don't ask me about her again. Don't ask me about her again.
That's a stupid-ass question.
Do you understand, sir, that you're under oath under penalty of perjury? This is not your show. This is my deposition.
Amber Heard is alleging that her ex-husband, actor Johnny Depp, was a drug-addicted abuser.
These accusations destroyed Johnny's career and reputation.
He just hit me over and over and over again.
Got this going? Oh, really?
I've never struck Miss Heard. I've never struck a woman.
Fights? Because you start physical fights?
You struck Mr. Depp multiple times during your relationship, didn't you, Miss Heard?
This is case My Channel versus West.
This deposition video has never been seen by the public until now.
I expected the worst. I knew Kanye was a wild card. Mr. West, why have you donned the mask to start this deposition?
You just entered my movie. You know who I am? You thought you could do this to Kanye West?
Kanye thought the rules of regular people don't apply to him.
You crazy?
No, you can
You
take
don't know who you're talking to.
My goal was to stay on that Bronco as long as I could.
Listen to my name, boy.
This deposition is taking place via Zoom video conferencing.
Mr. Rowe?
What is Atkinson Baker? That's the court reporter? Okay, hang on.
The court reporter service is on twice.
All right.
Madam Court Reporter, can you swear in our witness?
Yeah.
Mr. West, would you raise your right hand? Do you solemnly state, under penalty of perjury, that the evidence you shall give in this matter will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
This is case number 220, entitled My Channel versus West.
My name is Michael Popak. Can you hear me, Mr. West?
Yes.
Okay. I see that you're looking down at probably a device. Are you on your phone?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm going to ask as a ground rule that you not be on your phone during the exam. Can we agree to that?
Well, is that legally what it should be?
I'm not going to advise you as to the law. That's why your lawyers are here. But that is my ground rule for the deposition, consistent with California law, that you need to be present, focused on the examination, and not on a device.
Due to my mental geniusness, in order to focus on this bullshit, I need to be on a phone.
Counsel, do you want to speak to your client before we continue?
I think, well, Kanye, in terms of, you can listen to the questions and answer them, right?
Okay, I get off the phone.
Okay, Mr. West, why have you donned a mask to start this deposition?
Because you don't have the right to see my face.
And is it your intention to wear that mask for the entire duration of your examination?
Perhaps.
Okay. So, counsel, we're going to take this up with the magistrate, but I'm not going to delay the examination. We'll do it at the break.
Kanye obviously had planned a stunt. He had that mask in his pocket. He was just looking for the appropriate moment during the deposition. I'm in for a ride. My goal was to stay on that Bronco as long as I could.
Could you state your name and address for the record, sir?
Kanye Omari West.
And your address, sir?
The world. I just got a divorce.
Yeah. Into his e-commerce platform, selling Yeezy and other Kanye-created products. The My Channel founders invested 10,000 people hours and at least a $7 million total investment into the partnership with Kanye West. They devoted themselves full-time to Kanye. But after months of trying to get paid for the work that they did, Kanye West was no longer returning their phone calls. We finally got a hold of his lawyers, and Kanye's law firm said that a partnership never existed between the parties because there wasn't a written agreement.
They took him at his word and never signed a formal deal. but I could understand why people get caught up in the world of Kanye. I've interviewed Kanye many times, and he's intense. Kanye has that X factor, can make you literally feel like you're the only person in the room.
But the law recognizes an oral contract in that scenario. He really left them with no other choice but to bring the lawsuit against him.
Let the record reflect that the witness has put a mask on. We see the writing on the wall of what's going to happen here. So I'm going to implore the lawyers to speak to their client about being cooperative with the deposition that he's been noticed for and he's under oath. Let's go back to the ground rules for this deposition. You prevailed with the magistrate to have it by Zoom, but I get the equivalent of an in-person deposition. Mr. West, do you understand, sir, that you're under oath as if you were in a court of law? Do you understand that, sir? Yep.
Yes.
I had done my research about Kanye before preparing to take his deposition, and I had known from other media reports that he would attack the person asking the questions, he'd be dismissive over the case. I expected the worst.
I almost borderline like being sued because it's the only time where I can be myself, because I sit in those depositions and it'd be hilarious.
Okay, I get off the phone.
I wanted him to start answering my questions, but we were also prepared for it to take a lot of different twists and turns, including him acting out or being abusive. And one of the things I needed to establish in the deposition at the very beginning is that there was an actual meeting in Kanye's house in Calabasas with my channel. And that was the start of an oral partnership that in this case is just as binding and just as enforceable as a written contract. Frankly, it happens all the time. That's why the law recognizes oral agreements.
You don't have the right to see my face.
Let's start again, Mr. West. Your home address is what?
I don't have a home.
So you don't have a physical address that you live in?
I don't want to say. You're going to have pops up there.
Mr. Rowe, do you want to talk to your client about answering my questions?
Well, to the extent this is relevant, I mean, I understand why you're asking it, but I don't think it's relevant to the proceedings. Obviously, you can reach him through me.
Are you instructing your witness not to answer the question? We're on question 3 in this deposition. Are you instructing him not to answer?
I am not. I think he's answered.
He has not provided an answer. Mr. West, where
I'm
do
not
you...
gonna tell you where I stay. I'm not going to tell you where I stay. Are you crazy? You think I'm finna tell y'all where I stay? Y'all trying to stick me up with a bullshit, trying to stick me up for some paper? You think I'm finna tell you where I stay? Are you crazy?
So the reason that you're not...
I asked you a question. Are you crazy?
Mr. West, the way this works...
For the record, you didn't answer the question.
The way... Mr. West, this will go a lot better and without a lot of involvement.
What do you mean? It's going great for me. You just entered my movie.
And what movie is that, Mr. West?
Mine. I just told you.
What is the nature of the movie that I've now entered?
I just told you. Next question.
Is the nature of the movie that you're not going to respond to questions when asked?
Are you not going to respond? Are you crazy? Do you think it makes sense for me to give the address to somebody who's already trying to rob me? Are you crazy?
So at this point, I want to catalog his outbursts so I have a clear record for the judge.
Madam Court Reporter, mark the record here.
I can use the video for sanctions.
For the record, you didn't answer the question.
Are you
crazy?
We would do it all again under court order at his expense.
Next question.
On our terms, live and in person, it would give us tremendous leverage over Kanye West.
Okay, where are you currently giving the deposition from? Where is that room?
I'm not going to tell you. You're never going to see me again.
Madam Court Reporter, same thing. Mark the transcript. And who is in the room with you, if anyone?
No one's in this actual room with me.
Okay, and what other things do you have in the room besides the phone that you've identified?
Are you stupid? I'm not going to tell you other things. I don't have the time to be talking about. I got a chair in the room. You are talking to the richest black person in the history of America. You're talking to a black Trump supporter, bro. Out of here. Don't ask me no stupid. Ask me the stuff where y'all trying to get the paper from. Ask me what's in this room. Quit wasting your client's money.
All right, Mr. West, I'm going to give you the logistics and the ground rules for this deposition now that
You're not giving me nothing. I don't care about you.
Counsel,
You're not giving me nothing. You can't give me nothing.
Counsel,
are you crazy?
Okay, Kanye.
I'm going to ask that counsel for Mr. West offline speak to their client about his conduct.
No, you can't ask me for nothing, boy. You can't ask him to do nothing, boy. He worked for me, boy.
Everything that's happening here is perfect fodder for me in front of a jury.
You can't ask me for nothing, boy.
How he acted comported with the way that he acted towards our clients. It was a one-to-one correlation. He was erratic.
Are you crazy?
He ghosted our clients.
You trying to stick me up?
This is what led to the dispute.
Out of here.
His own lawyers abdicated their responsibility as officers of the court to keep him on the straight and narrow.
Are you stupid?
And I knew that would piss the judge off as well.
You can't tell my lawyer what to do. He worked for me, boy.
Mr. West.
This is a gift to my clients and to the case.
Because where we're going to end up with this, Mr. Rowe, is where we're going to end up with this.
So Michael, why don't you?
I love it. I want it. I want all the smoke. However you want it, boy.
Michael, why don't you give your
stick me up? You trying to stick me up? People coming talking about the name of Christ. You know what I'm saying? They're trying to stick me up. Boy, you crazy?
Mr. Rowe?
I live for this.
Mr.
I
Rowe?
live for this, boy. You ain't finna have it. I ain't finna get pulled over and you asking me to show my ID. Ask me to tell you where I'm at, boy. You crazy? Answer my question.
Mr. West, are you incapable?
Answer my question. You thought you could do this to Kanye West? Listen to my name, boy. You know who I am? Listen to my name, boy. Your clients, y'all all crazy.
Mr. West.
Y'all all crazy. It's not going to work, boy. God on my side.
This was a case my channel was forced to bring. They're out $7 million. They've abandoned all of their clients, and that Kanye had basically ghosted them. Kanye's law firm said, you got it wrong. A partnership never existed. Where's your contract? And then Sunday service happened.
Kanye West launches Sunday service. It's his weekly gospel service. It's an hour of singing. The choir is wearing Yeezy gear. And then Kanye started live streaming it.
He launched Sunday service with a major e-commerce component that looked suspiciously like the My Channel technology.
Then Kanye said that Sunday service was doing $1 million a night in Yeezy gear merch sales.
We believe he was using their technology in violation of the terms of that oral agreement. That was the basis for the lawsuit that we had filed.
Listen to my name, boy. You know who I am?
Mr. Rowe, what would you like to do next?
Michael, you can proceed. Proceed with your admonition.
Proceed with my admonition? Okay, so you're not going to... I just want to make sure we're clear for the record.
I was very shocked. He wants me to discipline Kanye. I felt his own lawyers were scared of him.
I'm free. I'm free.
They had lost control of their own client.
Mr. West, you're not answering my questions. Ekwan, you're going to be...
You can't tell my lawyer what to do. You work for me, boy.
Mr. West, if you're going to continue to have outbursts and be disruptive...
What you mean outbursts? This is where I talk.
I am sure you will end up...
It's an outburst for you to ask a Mensa level genius multi-billionaire what the hell is in a room with me. Don't disrespect me. I got things to do for the planet. I got people to heal. I got diets to change. I got no time for this.
I'm also
Y'all sticking me up.
Mr. West, if you're done with your outbursts, I can come back to mine.
If you're done with your outbursts, everything you say is like an outburst to me because you're trying to stick me up. Are you crazy? Are you crazy?
When a witness like Kanye is acting out this way, there's a balance that I'm trying to strike. I am trying to get under his skin.
Mr. West, this is not your show. This is my deposition.
What you mean? This is my show. This is my movie. Everything my show. Everywhere I go, my show.
But I still want to get the exam. I still need his testimony. And so I'm trying to find if there's that moment, that inflection point where he calms down and starts answering questions.
Do you know know who you talking to? I'm free. You're not talking to a slave mentality black man. You're an older white gentleman. You wouldn't know the path how to talk to a free man. I'm free. I'm free. I'm free.
Mr. West, are you incapable or unwilling to give an examination today?
What do you mean? This is you examiner, right?
No, you're not answering my questions. You're not answering my questions.
I'm not going to tell you what's in a room with me. I'm not going to answer no dumbass.
Michael, why don't you start with your next question?
Why don't you start with something that makes sense, boy?
No, I'm not. No, Mr. Rowe. I'm going to do my examination in my way. I've asked the witness what materials he has in the room because I don't have the ability to have had this deposition in person, which we required and requested. I get to know what he has next to him in terms of materials. I get to know what technology he has that may be assisting him during the deposition. Let's go back. Let's see if we can get
I made a calculated risk at that point that I had to establish dominance and that I was in charge.
So I return to my question, Mr. West. What do you have in the room in terms of materials that are in front of you during my deposition? Besides your hat, you have to answer aloud for the court reporter.
What does that hat say?
You can tell the court reporter what the hat says, sir.
So wait a second. You ain't gonna answer none of my questions. I only answer yours?
No, this is my deposition. You're under oath, sir, under penalty of perjury, not me. Madam Court Reporter, read back the pending question.
What do you have in the room in terms of materials that are in front of you during my deposition besides your hat?
I'm not going to answer that.
You refuse to answer my question, sir?
I refuse to answer the question of what I have in the room because it's a dumbass question.
Okay, Madam Court Reporter, mark the record. And for the lawyers on this phone call, to the extent that your client continues to waste my 7 hours of allotted time, we will require him to come back and give his deposition again.
What's going to happen to me? I'm going to go to jail?
Only answer my question, sir.
No, I'm asking. Equan, can I go to jail off of anything related to this lawsuit?
You're not here to ask questions, sir. You're here to answer.
What you mean I can't ask my lawyer a question? You crazy?
No, you can.
You don't know who you're talking to. I'm not some slave of yours, boy.
If you would
what you mean I can't ask my lawyer a question? That's the dumbest. Are you crazy? You just told me I can't ask my lawyer a question.
Mr. West.
No.
Michael, hang on, Michael. So, Kanye, if all we're doing is answering questions today, we'll be just fine.
All right, Mr. Rowe, that's your counsel for your client based on his outburst. Mark the record.
Hey, wait a second. Don't call what I'm doing an outburst. You hear me?
Well, so far, Mr. West, you've called me boy about a dozen times. You've cursed throughout this deposition, and you've refused to answer questions. So I don't know any other way to frame it.
It is a frame, isn't it? You finally said something that made sense.
He is never going to answer a question from me during this deposition. So now let's just make it all about the video that I'm going to use in front of the jury.
What do you mean I can't ask my lawyer a question? Are you stupid?
He actually took the stand at trial with a suit and tie and act like the calm, cool, and collected Kanye. I get to play this video.
You thought you could do this to Kanye West? Y'all all crazy.
Mr. West.
And that will destroy credibility and authenticity with the jury. A jury can smell a fraud a mile away.
Let's go back. Let's see if we can get through this examination over the next 7 hours. We have 7 hours of time together, exclusive of breaks. But I'm letting you know now, if this is a wasted time because you don't answer the question, we've lost the witness. Mr. Rowe, we've lost your witness on video.
I can tell.
All right, Equan, I'm going to take a break so that the lawyers can talk to their client, and I mean Mr. West.
All right, let me try to find him.
And just let the record reflect we didn't lose the witness. He shut off his video and he shut off his computer.
I'm going to take a 5-minute break in order to try to collect on our side what we're going to do next.
He never came back to the deposition.
I got people to heal. I got diets to change.
There is no world in which what he just did doesn't benefit my client and our case.
That's the dumbest shit. Are you crazy?
If he goes to a jury trial, the jury would find, ultimately in our favor, this is a win.
No.
I think this was all mapped out like in a sketchbook in his mind.
What does that hat say?
About how this was going to go.
No, you can't ask me for nothing, boy.
This is a show. He thinks that we're all just players in a giant movie created by Kanye West.
You just entered my movie.
And he was in for a rude awakening.
This is not your show. This is my deposition.
You crazy?
Ultimately, the parties settled amicably. The deposition was the most important development in the case, demonstrating to both Kanye and his lawyers, we can't take this case to a jury in LA with Kanye acting like this. The terms of the settlement negotiated between the parties is confidential, but the My Channel founders are satisfied with the result, and they both moved on. And justice was ultimately done.
Kanye West certainly thought because he was a celebrity, the rules of regular people don't apply to him. He also used that power to trample on a little company, probably never thinking that he'd be called into account and have to pay the price.
Kanye assumed the My Channel founders were not going to fight back when he stole their technology. He knew that they were vulnerable. They can hold their heads up high because they held Kanye West accountable.
There is so much interest in this high-profile case between these two Hollywood megastars. Amber Heard is alleging that her ex-husband, actor Johnny Depp, was a drug-addicted abuser. All the while, Depp is saying Heard is lying about all of that.
These accusations destroyed Johnny's career and reputation, and did so in an instant. The stakes could not be higher. Johnny had to get his name back.
Your Honor, we call Mr. John C. Depp. Can you please tell the jury why you're here today?
About 6 years ago, Ms. Heard brought these disturbing criminal acts against me that were not based in any species of truth. I've never struck Ms. Heard. I've never struck a woman in my life. Nothing of the kind had ever happened. For me to come up here and spill the truth is quite exposing, but I know that I'm doing the right thing.
This trial was a huge deal. Johnny and Amber met on the set of The Rum Diary. They got married in 2015. But Amber filed for divorce after 15 months.
Both parties put out a joint statement saying, our relationship was tumultuous, but it was based in love.
In 2018, Amber Heard published an op-ed in the Washington Post suggesting that she was a victim of sexual violence in addition to physical violence 2 years earlier.
Now, she didn't mention Johnny Depp's name, but it's pretty obvious who she's talking about. And that's when there was all this speculation about Johnny Depp. Did he abuse Amber Heard?
The ramifications of this op-ed were immediate and devastating. Disney fired him from the next Pirates of the Caribbean movie. These accusations destroyed Johnny's career and reputation.
Johnny Depp claimed that he would never do the things that Amber Heard claimed he did. And he ultimately decided that he wanted to pursue a defamation claim against Ms. Heard. He was seeking $50 million in compensatory and punitive damages.
It became a huge frenzy. This was Johnny Depp and Amber Heard exposed, and you wanted to hang on to every single word that they both were saying.
Mr. Depp, I'd like to now turn to your relationship with Ms. Heard. Mr. Depp, have you ever physically assaulted Miss Heard?
Never.
Have you ever sexually assaulted Miss Heard?
Never. Certainly not.
What have you lost as a result of Miss Heard making these allegations against you?
Nothing less than everything.
This case was he said, she said, and Johnny knew that he would have to show that she was not telling the truth, that he was the victim.
When did Miss Heard's behavior towards you begin to change?
These little digs would escalate into a full-scale argument. Miss Heard, in her anger, she would strike out. She would. It could begin with a slap. It could begin with a shove. It could begin with throwing a TV remote at my head. As it escalated, I removed myself from the situation so that it couldn't continue. I would just go and lock myself in the bathroom or anywhere that she couldn't get into.
Did there come a time when you and Miss Heard started recording your arguments?
Yes. She had completely denied things she'd said directly to my face. So I said, I'm going to record us. And I did.
I was hitting you. I was not punching you. Babe, you're not punched.
Don't tell me what it feels like to be punched.
You get punched. You got hit. I'm sorry I hit you like this, but I did not punch you. I did not deck you. I was hitting you. You're a baby.
And
you
physical
are
fights?
such a baby.
Because you start physical fights?
I did start a physical fight.
Yeah, you did, so I had to get the f*** out of there.
Those recordings confirmed that she would get violent with him. And his instinct is not to fight, but to run away and hide.
I'm sorry I hit you. I did mean to hit you.
We wanted to deconstruct major pieces of her narrative through her own words. What is this, a picture of Mr. Depp?
A wound from Miss Heard taking my cigarette, and she stubbed it out on my cheek.
What's reflected in this photograph?
Nailed me on the cheekbone.
What's reflected in this picture?
This was taken in the surgeon's office.
How did it come to be that your finger became injured?
She was banging on the doors and screaming obscenities and wanting to have a physical altercation. And so I was leaning like this in the chair. She threw the large bottle and it made contact and shattered everywhere. And then I looked down and realized that the tip of my finger had been severed.
Morning, Mr. Depp.
Morning, Mr. Robinborn.
You would agree that you found drugs and alcohol at an early stage in your life?
Certainly, yes, I did.
And one of your good friends that you've taken drugs with before is Marilyn Manson, right?
Yes, we've drank together. We've had cocaine together maybe a couple of times.
Pills, right?
I once gave Marilyn Manson a pill so that he would stop talking so much. Sorry.
All right. I get it. And you would sometimes drink whiskey in the mornings too, right?
Isn't happy hour anytime?
Johnny's use of humor really undermined whatever serious point Amber's counsel was trying to make. We wanted to humanize Johnny before the jury so they could understand why hitting the woman he loved, it's something that he's just not capable of. But the one thing that we're concerned about is whether he might lose his temper. The other side is going to do everything possible to get Johnny to show anger.
Can you please bring up Defendant's Exhibit 638? Your Honor, move for the admission of this video into evidence.
What happened?
You want to see crazy? I'll give you That's crazy. Oh, you're crazy. Oh, you're crazy.
Have you drunk this whole thing this morning?
Oh, you got this going. You got this going?
I just started it.
Oh, really? Really?
You would agree that you were violent in that clip, correct?
Clearly I was having a bad time. I did assault a couple of cabinets, but I did not touch Miss Heard.
You may have been drunk in that video, correct?
There's a possibility of that, yes, sir.
You poured yourself a mega pint of red wine, correct?
A mega pint?
Yeah.
I poured myself a large glass of wine.
Right.
I thought it necessary.
One of the things that lawyers try to do on cross-examination is to maintain control of the witness. And that's something that Johnny simply did not allow him to do.
Your Honor, we'd like to call Amber Heard to the stand.
For Amber's testimony, we were prepared for her to get up there and describe numerous incidents of alleged abuse.
He just hit me over and over and over again. He's punching me with a closed fist, punching me, pounding the back of my head, pounding it with his fist. And I thought, this is how I die. He's gonna kill me now.
She said things that we knew we would be able to effectively disprove. We were going to argue that there was no evidence of physical injuries of the type that Amber described. We were looking forward to the cross-examination.
Be seated. Cross-examination.
We wanted to show the jury that Amber had a history of not telling the truth. If you can show that someone's not telling the truth about a few things, then it's not unreasonable for the jury to infer that the rest is not true.
Good afternoon, Miss Heard.
Good afternoon.
Including that Ms. Heard deliberately lied about donating all $7 million of the divorce settlement to charity.
Sitting here today, Miss Heard, you still haven't donated the $7 million divorce settlement to charity. Isn't that right?
Incorrect. I pledged the entirety of the
Ms. Heard,
settlement, $7 million to charity, and I intend to fulfill those obligations.
Ms. Heard, that's not my question. Sitting here today, you have not donated the $7 million, donated, not pledged, donated the $7 million divorce settlement to charity.
I use pledge and donation synonymous with one another. They
But
do
I
the same
don't.
thing.
Ms. Heard, I don't use it synonymously. So as of today, you have not donated, paid $7 million of your divorce settlement to charity, right?
I have not been able to fulfill those obligations yet. I pledged the entirety.
But you didn't donate it.
Unfortunately,
you didn't donate it. It's a yes or no.
I haven't been able to to fulfill those.
So that's a
obligations.
no, right, Ms. Heard?
I made the pledge. I want to be very clear. I pledged the entirety. I haven't been able to fulfill those pledges because I've been sued.
You had all of the $7 million for 13 months before Mr. Depp sued you and you chose not to pay it to the charities you pledged it to. Is that correct, Ms.
I
Hurd?
disagree with your characterization of that.
We hope the jury would realize that if this person is capable of lying about giving money to sick children, she's capable of lying about abuse.
Mr. Depp wears rings on every finger, doesn't he, Ms. Hurd?
That's my experience, yes.
And they're not delicate rings, are they?
No, they are not.
You testified to an incident in March of 2013 where Mr. Depp hit you several times in the face wearing rings. Do you recall that?
That's correct.
You testified that this is the picture you took after that incident, right, Ms. Hurd?
Yes, that was one where he grabbed me.
And hit you in the face so many times that you don't remember. Isn't that correct?
That's correct.
And there's no injuries to your face in this picture, are there?
Not that this picture shows.
Despite hitting you several times that you lost count with rings on his fingers.
That's correct.
In my opinion, there would have been not only serious injuries, but there would have been medical records. But there wasn't any medical records. That's why it was an incredibly difficult case to prove, because you are proving a negative. You are proving that no abuse ever happened. We could put on a perfect case and still lose this.
Ms. Hurd, you testified yesterday that this is a photograph taken of you on May 21st, 2016.
Yes, that's correct. This is my face after Johnny threw a phone at it. My best friend took pictures of my face because the cops were coming.
If we could please do a split screen. You testified yesterday that the only difference between these two photographs is that the light was turned on.
That's what it appears to be, yes.
Isn't it true you just edited these photographs?
No, I've never edited a photograph.
Didn't you just enhance the saturation for one of these photos to make your face look more red?
No, that's incorrect. I didn't touch it.
You were sitting here in this courtroom when Officer Melissa Sines testified that she did not see any injuries on you that night, correct?
I heard her testify she did not consider this injured.
No. Officer Sines testified that she met with you and she did not see any injuries on your face. Officer Tyler Haddon also testified no injuries on your face on May 21, 2016. Isn't that correct?
They both said that they did not consider me injured.
You were also in this courtroom when Alejandro Romero, who worked at the front desk, testified that he didn't see any swelling or bruises on your face when you were talking to him at the front desk. Isn't that correct?
I know that's what he testified to, yes.
Can we please pull up Plaintiff's Exhibit 356?
I can't promise you I won't get physical again. God, I sometimes get so mad I lose it.
Ms. Hurd, that's you and Mr. Depp on that recording, correct?
That's correct.
And you told Mr. Depp, quote, "I can't promise you that I won't get physical," end quote, correct?
That's correct.
And you also told Mr. Depp that sometimes you get so mad you lose it, correct?
That's correct.
You got physical with Mr. Depp often during your relationship, didn't you?
I had to defend myself as best I could. Didn't seem to make much of a difference.
You struck Mr. Depp multiple times during your relationship, didn't you, Ms. Hurd?
There were many times I had to use my body to defend myself, and that included swinging wherever I could. If it meant I could get away, absolutely. You bet I would.
Since your testimony under oath that you never struck Mr. Depp as the initial aggressor?
I might be the first person to have been the first one to slap, but I wouldn't say I was the initial aggressor.
You just couldn't control yourself, could you, Ms. Hurd?
I tried to defend myself when I could.
No further questions, Your Honor.
All right.
I understand we have a verdict.
We were all exhausted. Then the nervousness really set in. No matter how well you think the evidence has come in, it's always up to the jury.
As to the statement, I spoke up against sexual violence and faced our culture's wrath. Do you find that Mr. Depp has proven all the elements of defamation? Yes. As to the statement, then 2 years ago, I became a public figure representing domestic abuse. Do you find that Mr. Depp has proven all the elements of defamation? Yes. As to this statement, I had the rare vantage point of seeing in real time how institutions protect men accused of abuse. Do you find that Mr. Depp has proven all the elements of defamation? Answer, yes.
Ultimately, there was solid evidence that Amber Heard's version of what happened is demonstrably false. And the jury felt the same way.
All right, thank you.
Johnny was not with us when we learned of the verdict. He had a prior engagement, but we spoke to him afterwards.
He was elated, and he sounded as if the weight of the world was off of his shoulders. I mean, he sounded like a kid. He was thrilled. After the verdict, Johnny had no interest in bankrupting Amber, so ultimately it settled and she paid $1 million.
It's truly been a victory for Johnny Depp. He has appeared to completely bounce back. He's starring in movies again, and he was able to redeem himself and take back his reputation.
I admire Johnny tremendously. It's a victory for the truth.
There's some mysteries that begin with violence. A scream, a gunshot, a shattered window, a desperate call for help. And then there are mysteries that begin with something so ordinary that, years later, the people left behind find themselves replaying the moment over and over again, searching for the single detail they missed. The disappearance of Mirella Gregori belongs to that second category. No one heard a struggle. No one reported an abduction. No alarming message arrived beforehand. There was no note left behind on a bedroom desk. No secret plan discovered later. No dramatic farewell. Instead, there was only a teenage girl who left her apartment one afternoon because someone had asked to see her. She expected to return in a few minutes. She never did. More than 40 years have passed since that day, and despite countless theories, investigations, media coverage, anonymous tips, and renewed inquiries, nobody has ever been able to answer the most important question of all. What happened to Mirella Gregori? To understand why this case continues to haunt Italy decades later, we have to return to a Saturday afternoon in Rome. Not to a dark alleyway, not to a remote countryside road, but to an ordinary residential building in the middle of a busy city. The kind of place where people come and go without drawing attention. The kind of place where a 15-year-old girl could walk downstairs and disappear into history. It was May 7th, 1983. Spring had settled over Rome. The city was alive with its usual rhythm. Cars moved through crowded streets. Families spent the afternoon together. Shop owners greeted customers. Students enjoyed the freedom of a weekend. Nothing about that day suggested that it would become one of the most discussed and controversial missing person cases in modern Italian history. For the Gregori family, it began as an entirely normal day. Mirella Gregori had returned home after school. She was 15 years old, young enough to still be under the watchful eye of her parents, yet old enough to move through her neighborhood with a sense of independence that many teenagers crave. By all accounts, there was nothing unusual about her behavior, nothing that hinted at fear, nothing that suggested she intended to leave her life behind, nothing that would later stand out as a warning sign. At some point during the afternoon, according to later accounts, Mirella visited a bar located beneath her family's apartment building. There she met her friend, Sonia DeVito. The two girls reportedly spent time talking together in private. A brief conversation, approximately 10 minutes. A seemingly insignificant interaction that would later attract enormous attention from investigators and journalists searching for clues. But at the time, it was simply a conversation between two teenagers. No one could have known that nearly every detail from that afternoon would eventually be examined. Under a microscope, every conversation, every movement, every memory, every minute. Afterward, Morella returned upstairs. The day continued. Then came the sound that would change everything. The intercom rang. A common sound. An everyday sound. The kind of thing people hear without giving it a second thought. Someone was downstairs asking to speak with Morella. According to her mother, the caller identified himself as Alessandro. The name meant something to Morella. She reportedly understood immediately who the caller claimed to be. An old school friend. Someone familiar. Someone who, on the surface, did not appear threatening. There was no reason to panic. No reason to suspect danger. No reason for a family to imagine that the next few moments would become the final known chapter in their daughter's life. Morella informed her mother that she was going downstairs to meet him. Just for a short while. Just a few minutes. Then she would come back. Those words would acquire enormous weight in the years that followed, because they were built upon an assumption shared by everyone involved. The assumption that she would return. The assumption that there would be another conversation later that evening. Another dinner. Another school day. Another birthday. Another year. Instead, there was silence. Morella left the apartment. She went downstairs. And then she vanished. The image is almost impossible to ignore. A 15-year-old girl walking out of her home in broad daylight. Not running away. Not hiding. Not fleeing. Simply answering what appeared to be a routine request to meet someone she believed she knew. Then suddenly nothing. No verified sightings. No confirmed explanation. No clear trail. No answers. Just absence. As the minutes passed, the expectation of her return slowly transformed into concern. Concern transformed into fear. And fear eventually transformed into a mystery that would endure for decades. When investigators began examining the case, one fact immediately stood out. The alleged caller. Alessandro. Who was he? What did he want? And why had he asked for Morella that afternoon? At first glance, this seemed like the obvious place to begin. If Alessandro had been the last known person to contact her, perhaps he could explain what happened. Perhaps the mystery would be solved quickly. Perhaps there had been a misunderstanding. Perhaps Morella had simply gone somewhere unexpectedly. But reality would prove far more complicated. Police eventually located and questioned the individual believed to be the Alessandro mentioned by Morella. What they found was startling. He had a clear alibi. According to investigators, he had not been in contact with Morella for months. The evidence indicated that he was not involved in her disappearance. Just as suddenly as the first major lead had appeared, it collapsed. And in its place emerged an even more troubling question. If the real Alessandro had not called, then who had? Whoever contacted Morella that afternoon apparently knew enough about her life to use a familiar name. Enough to convince her to come downstairs. Enough to lower her guard. Enough to get her out of the safety of her home. Whether that person intended harm from the beginning remains unknown. Whether Morella recognized the individual once she arrived downstairs remains unknown. Whether she willingly walked away with someone or was forced into a situation she could not escape remains unknown. The case is filled with such unknowns. In fact, the disappearance of Morella Gregori would become defined by them. Unknown person. Unknown motive. Unknown destination. Unknown fate. What makes the story even more unsettling is where it happened. This was not a disappearance from a remote wilderness. Not a disappearance from a deserted highway. Rome was one of Europe's largest cities. People were everywhere. Vehicles moved constantly through the streets. Businesses operated throughout the day. Life surrounded her on all sides. Yet somehow, a 15-year-old girl disappeared so completely that investigators would spend decades trying to reconstruct what happened after she stepped outside. And then, just as authorities struggled to make progress, another shocking event would occur. Only 40 days later, another 15-year-old girl vanished in Rome. Her name was Emanuela Orlandi. Like Morella, she disappeared without a trace. Like Morella, she left behind a devastated family. Like Morella, she became the center of an investigation filled with theories, speculation, and unanswered questions. Soon, many people began asking whether the two disappearances were connected. The similarities were difficult to ignore. Two girls, the same age, the same city, no bodies, no definitive evidence, no resolution. As months turned into years, the mystery surrounding Morella Gregori expanded far beyond the circumstances of a single missing person case. Anonymous callers would emerge. Strange claims would be made. A mysterious figure known in the media as the American would insert himself into the story. The Vatican would eventually enter public speculation. International terrorism theories would surface. Investigators would examine possibilities ranging from organized conspiracies to isolated criminal acts. Every new lead seemed to generate more questions than answers. And yet, through all the noise, one simple truth remained unchanged. Everything began with a teenage girl answering an intercom. A girl who believed she was meeting someone she knew. A girl who expected to return home moments later. A girl whose future disappeared somewhere between the apartment she left and the destination she never reached. Today, more than 4 decades later, the name Morella Gregori still occupies a unique place in Italian criminal history. Not because investigators uncovered a dramatic solution. Not because a culprit was identified. Not because a courtroom delivered justice. But because none of those things happened. The mystery survived. Year after year. Decade after decade. Theories came and went. Suspects appeared and disappeared. Investigations opened and closed. Yet the central question endured. What happened after Morella Gregori walked downstairs on the afternoon of May 7th, 1983? That question remains unanswered. And it is where our story begins. When a disappearance remains unsolved for years, something unusual begins to happen. The person at the center of the case slowly risks becoming secondary to the mystery itself. Investigators focus on timelines. Journalists focus on theories. The public debates suspects, motives, and unanswered questions. Eventually, the missing individual can become little more than a photograph attached to an unresolved file. The details of who they were as a human being begin to fade behind a larger story. That is why, before we continue into the investigation, it is important to pause and remember that Morella Gregori was not originally a mystery. She was a 15-year-old girl with a family, friends, routines, conversations, plans, and an ordinary life. Long before her name appeared in newspaper headlines. Long before investigators began searching for answers. Long before journalists linked her disappearance to international conspiracies and Vatican speculation. She was simply Morella. She was born on October 7th, 1967, in Rome, Italy. By the spring of 1983, she was 15 years old. She lived with her family on Via Nomentana, one of Rome's important thoroughfares. It was not an isolated place hidden from the world. It was part of a busy urban environment where people lived, worked, studied, and moved through their daily routines. From everything that has been publicly reported, Morella appeared to be a normal teenager. Those who knew her described her as sociable, intelligent, and surrounded by friends. These descriptions may sound simple, but in missing person investigations they matter. They help investigators understand whether someone might have had reasons to disappear voluntarily. or whether their disappearance appears inconsistent with their personality and circumstances. In Morella's case, the image that emerged was not that of a troubled teenager preparing to abandon her life. Instead, it was the image of a young girl actively engaged with the world around her. Friends knew her. Family members interacted with her daily. Her life followed recognizable patterns. There was no obvious sign that she intended to leave everything behind. Looking back decades later, one of the most striking aspects of the case is precisely how ordinary her life appeared before May 1983. There were no public indications of dramatic conflict, no known preparations for escape, no evidence suggesting she was planning a secret departure, no farewell messages, no declarations that she wished to vanish. That absence would become one of the most significant factors shaping the investigation. In many disappearance cases, investigators attempt to determine whether the missing person left voluntarily. Such scenarios often leave traces behind. There may be preparations, communications, financial activity, personal belongings removed from a residence, or statements indicating a desire to start over somewhere else. Yet nothing in the known information surrounding Morella pointed clearly in that direction. The result was a case that immediately appeared more troubling. If she had not planned to disappear, then something else must have happened. To understand why her disappearance shocked so many people, it is helpful to understand the environment in which she lived. Rome in 1983 was a city of immense history and complexity. Ancient monuments stood alongside modern neighborhoods. Tourists mixed with residents. Religious institutions existed alongside businesses, schools, and government offices. Millions of people moved through the city every year. Life in Rome was not defined by isolation. It was defined by activity. Crowded streets, busy public spaces, and constant movement formed part of everyday life. In such an environment, many people naturally assume that complete disappearances are less likely. The presence of witnesses, traffic, and population density creates a sense of security. Yet history repeatedly demonstrates that cities can produce mysteries every bit as baffling as those found in remote locations. Sometimes even more so. Crowds can conceal as effectively as solitude. A stranger can blend into a busy street more easily than into an empty one. And a person can disappear among thousands of others without immediately attracting attention. Still, for the Gregori family, there was no reason to imagine that such thoughts would ever become relevant to their lives. The family home represented normality. It was the center of daily routines. Meals were shared there. Conversations took place there. Like countless families throughout Rome, the Gregoris moved through ordinary days governed by school schedules, household responsibilities, and future plans. Morella's world was not defined by mystery. It was defined by familiarity. This makes the events of May 7th, 1983, particularly difficult to comprehend. The distance between ordinary life and lifelong uncertainty can sometimes be measured in only a few minutes. One moment a family is planning tomorrow. The next, they are searching for answers that may never come. Before that day arrived, however, Morella's life revolved around the people she knew. Among those people was Sonia DeVito, the friend whose name would later appear repeatedly in discussions of the case. At the time, however, Sonia was simply part of Morella's social circle. Friends are a central part of adolescence. Conversations that seem unimportant to adults can carry enormous significance to teenagers. Private discussions, shared experiences, and everyday interactions create the social fabric of teenage life. Investigators would later scrutinize Morella's final known activities and discover that one of the last reported interactions she had was with Sonia. According to some accounts, the two girls met at a bar located beneath the Gregori family's apartment building on the day Morella disappeared. They reportedly spent approximately 10 minutes talking privately in a restroom before Morella left. At first glance, this detail appears ordinary. Friends talk. Teenagers seek privacy. Conversations happen every day. Yet after a disappearance, even the most routine moments acquire new significance. Investigators naturally ask questions that could never have been anticipated beforehand. What was discussed? Did either girl mention future plans? Did Morella seem worried about anything? Did she mention meeting someone? Did she reveal information that later became important? The challenge, of course, is that many conversations leave no permanent record. Once spoken, words vanish unless someone remembers them. And memory itself becomes increasingly complicated as years pass and events are reinterpreted through the lens of tragedy. Another person who would become relevant to the story was the individual known as Alessandro. Before the disappearance, this was simply the name of a former school friend. Nothing about the name itself would have seemed remarkable. Yet, after Morella vanished, Alessandro's identity became critically important because he was reportedly the person whose name was used to persuade her to come downstairs on the afternoon she disappeared. Understanding this detail requires us to consider how trust operates in everyday life. Most people do not respond to complete strangers the same way they respond to familiar names. Recognition creates comfort. Familiarity lowers suspicion. If someone claims to be a friend, a classmate, or an acquaintance, the request to meet them often appears harmless. In Morella's case, the name Alessandro apparently carried enough familiarity that she did not perceive danger. She reportedly informed her mother that she was going downstairs to meet him and expected to return shortly afterward. Looking back now, that moment appears tragic, but at the time, it likely seemed completely routine. This is one of the most haunting aspects of the case. Nothing about the available information suggests that Morella knew she was walking into danger. There are no indications that she left her home frightened. There are no indications that she sensed something was wrong. There are no indications that she believed she was saying goodbye. Everything points toward a young girl who expected the encounter to be brief and ordinary. That expectation would never be fulfilled. The more investigators examined Morella's background, the more difficult it became to reconcile her disappearance with her known life. She did not fit neatly into theories of voluntary flight. She did not appear to be preparing for a new identity or a secret departure. Instead, the evidence suggested continuity. School, friends, family, daily routines, future plans. These were the elements that defined her life. That is why the disappearance generated such profound concern from the beginning. It seemed disconnected from everything people knew about her. Cases involving teenagers often force investigators to confront a difficult reality. Adults frequently know less about adolescents' private lives than they assume. Young people maintain friendships, conversations, and experiences beyond the awareness of parents and teachers. Because of this, investigators could not simply assume they understood every aspect of Morella's world. They had to examine her relationships, her habits, and her recent activities. Yet despite those efforts, no clear explanation emerged. Instead, what investigators encountered was a puzzle. A sociable girl with no known plans to disappear. A familiar name used to lure her downstairs. A city full of people but lacking reliable witnesses. A final afternoon that appeared ordinary until it suddenly became extraordinary. These contradictions would define the case for decades. In retrospect, one of the saddest aspects of the story is the way time freezes around unresolved disappearances. Most people continue growing older. Their lives expand through experiences, careers, relationships, and families. But for the public, the missing individual often remains fixed at the age they were when they vanished. Morella Gregori was 15 years old in 1983. As years passed, the world changed around her story. Governments changed. Technologies evolved. Entire generations grew up. Yet the image associated with the case remained the same. A teenage girl on the threshold of adulthood. forever frozen in time because nobody knows what happened next. For a family, however, the passage of time likely felt very different. Every anniversary represented another year without answers. Every new lead carried hope. Every dead end brought disappointment. And every public theory risked distracting attention from the person at the center of the mystery. Before she became the subject of speculation involving anonymous callers, Vatican connections, intelligence documents, and international intrigue, she was simply a daughter returning home after school, a friend meeting another friend, a teenager living an ordinary life in Rome. That ordinary life is important to remember because it highlights the true tragedy of the case. The story is not remarkable because Morella was famous. It is remarkable because she was not. She was an ordinary young girl whose disappearance transformed her into the center of one of Italy's most enduring mysteries. The contrast between those two realities, an ordinary life and an extraordinary mystery, lies at the heart of everything that followed. And on the afternoon of May 7th, 1983, that ordinary life was about to be interrupted forever. Every unsolved disappearance contains a moment when certainty ends. Before that point, events can be reconstructed with reasonable confidence. People remember conversations. Family members recall routines. Witnesses place individuals in specific locations. A timeline exists. The story moves forward in a straight line. Then there comes a moment when the trail simply stops. A door closes. A phone call ends. Someone turns a corner. A vehicle drives away. And from that point onward, facts begin to give way to questions. For Morella Gregori, the dividing line arrived during the afternoon of May 7th, 1983. Everything that happened before could be described with relative clarity. Everything that happened afterward remains unknown. More than 4 decades later, investigators, journalists, and family members are still standing at that invisible boundary, looking into a darkness that has never fully lifted. The day itself began without any indication that it would become one of the most discussed dates in Italian criminal history. It was a Saturday. For most people in Rome, it was simply another spring weekend. The city moved through its normal rhythm. Families gathered. Businesses operated. Students enjoyed their time away from school obligations. Nothing in the atmosphere of the city hinted that a mystery was about to begin. For 15-year-old Morella Gregori, the day initially followed an equally ordinary pattern. According to the known timeline, she returned home after school during the early afternoon. This simple detail matters because it establishes something investigators would repeatedly return to over the years. There was nothing unusual about her movements. She was not reported to be acting strangely. She was not known to be upset. She was not observed preparing for a departure. She came home. A routine action. The kind of action repeated countless times before. The family apartment on Via Nomentana represented familiarity and safety. It was where daily life happened. The place where the ordinary events of adolescence unfolded. No one inside that home had any reason to believe that this would be the final afternoon they would spend with Morella. Yet when investigators later attempted to reconstruct her last known hours, they discovered an event that would become one of the most discussed elements of the case. At some point after returning home, according to certain witness accounts, Morella visited the bar located beneath the apartment building. There she met Sonia DeVito. At the time, there was nothing remarkable about this encounter. Teenagers meet friends every day. Conversations occur constantly. Most are forgotten almost immediately afterward. But when someone disappears, even the most ordinary moments suddenly acquire significance. According to the accounts later examined by investigators, Morella and Sonia reportedly entered a restroom together and spent approximately 10 minutes talking in private. 10 minutes. A remarkably short amount of time. And yet, in a case where so few verified facts exist, those 10 minutes would later become the subject of intense interest. What did they discuss? Was the conversation important? Did it concern plans for later that day? Did Morella mention someone she intended to meet? Did Sonia learn something that would only become meaningful after the disappearance? The unfortunate reality is that no definitive answers emerged. The conversation remains one of many unresolved fragments within the larger mystery. What is known is that after this meeting, Morella left. At the time, nobody viewed that departure as significant. No one knew it was part of the final sequence of events that could be reconstructed with any degree of confidence. As the afternoon continued, Morella returned to her family's apartment. The hours passed quietly. Then sometime between approximately 2:45 and 3:00 p.m., something happened that would forever alter the course of the day. The intercom rang. To understand why this detail is so haunting, it is important to appreciate how ordinary it must have seemed at the time. Intercoms ring every day. Visitors arrive. Friends stop by. Neighbors ask questions. Deliveries are made. People come and go. Nothing about the sound itself would have suggested danger. Nothing about the situation appeared extraordinary. Someone was downstairs asking to speak with Morella. According to her mother, the caller identified himself as Alessandro. The name immediately appeared familiar. This was not a stranger introducing himself with an unknown identity. The caller claimed to be someone Morella knew. An old school friend. A recognizable name. A familiar connection. The significance of this moment cannot be overstated. Trust often depends on familiarity. People naturally lower their guard when they believe they know who is contacting them. A familiar name can accomplish something a stranger often cannot. It can create a sense of safety, a sense of normality, a sense that nothing unusual is happening. That appears to have been exactly the case. According to the known accounts, Morella did not react with fear. She did not appear alarmed. She did not indicate that the request was suspicious. Instead, she reportedly informed her mother that she was going downstairs to meet Alessandro. Just briefly. Only for a few minutes. Then she would come back. Those words have echoed through decades of investigation. Not because they contained hidden meaning, but because they reflected complete confidence that nothing was wrong. There was no farewell in them, no sense of finality, no awareness that this would be the last conversation her family would ever have with her. Like countless teenagers before and after her, Morella expected to leave home and return shortly afterward. The simplicity of that expectation makes the tragedy even more difficult to comprehend. Imagine the scene. A mother hears her daughter explain where she is going. A daughter walks toward the door. Perhaps there's an assumption that another conversation will occur later that afternoon. Perhaps dinner plans are already forming. Perhaps tomorrow's activities are already being considered. Nothing suggests catastrophe. Nothing suggests permanence. Nothing suggests disappearance. Then the door closes. Morella leaves the apartment. She heads downstairs, and history reaches the edge of certainty. What happened next? That is the question that has remained unanswered since 1983. Investigators know she left. They know she intended to meet someone claiming to be Alessandro. They know she never returned. Beyond that point, the timeline fractures. There are no confirmed details that explain what occurred. No verified account describing where she went. No reliable witness able to reconstruct the crucial moments that followed. The case simply enters a void. One possibility is that Morella encountered the person who contacted her. Another possibility is that events unfolded differently. But the evidence available to investigators has never been sufficient to establish a definitive sequence. The result is one of the most frustrating characteristics of the entire case. The disappearance appears to have occurred in broad daylight, not in isolation, not in secrecy, not under the cover of darkness, but in a populated urban environment, a place where people were present, a place where traffic moved, a place where countless ordinary activities unfolded around her. And yet no clear explanation emerged. The hours that followed must have been agonizing for the Gregory family. At first, concern may not have seemed necessary. After all, Morella had said she would return shortly. A delay of a few minutes would not automatically trigger panic. Perhaps she had stopped to talk with someone. Perhaps plans had changed unexpectedly. Perhaps there was a simple explanation. But as time passed, those reassuring possibilities became harder to believe. Minutes turned into hours. The expected return never happened. Concern grew. Questions multiplied. Where was she? Who had contacted her? Why wasn't she coming home? Every family confronted with a sudden disappearance faces a cruel transformation. Ordinary explanations gradually become less convincing. Hope and fear begin competing with each other. One part of the mind searches for harmless answers. Another begins imagining possibilities it desperately wishes were not true. For the Gregory family, that transformation had begun, and it would never truly end. The disappearance immediately presented investigators with a critical lead. The caller. The person who had identified himself as Alessandro. If police could locate him, perhaps they could determine exactly what happened. Perhaps he had met Morella. Perhaps he knew where she had gone. Perhaps he was the final person to see her alive. The investigation, therefore, focused considerable attention on identifying and questioning the individual whose name had been used during the intercom call. What investigators discovered would dramatically alter the direction of the case. The real Alessandro possessed a clear alibi. More importantly, according to investigators, he had not been in contact with Morella for months. The evidence indicated that he was not involved in her disappearance. At first glance, this might seem like progress. Investigators had eliminated a suspect. But in reality, it created a far more disturbing problem. If Alessandro had not contacted Morella, then someone else had used his name. Someone had known enough about her life to select a familiar identity. Someone had understood that the name would likely persuade her to come downstairs. Someone had deliberately presented themselves as a trusted acquaintance. That realization transformed the nature of the mystery. The disappearance no longer appeared to revolve around a former school friend. Instead, it suggested the possibility of deception. The possibility that someone had carefully chosen a familiar name for a specific purpose. Whether that purpose involved abduction, manipulation, or something else entirely remains unknown. But the implications were deeply troubling, because it meant that whoever contacted Morella may have understood something about her social world. Perhaps they knew who her friends were. Perhaps they knew enough about her history to select a believable identity. Or perhaps the choice was coincidence. Investigators could not determine which explanation was correct. And so the mystery deepened. One of the most haunting aspects of the case is how little separates normality from catastrophe. No dramatic confrontation was observed. No emergency call was made. No visible warning sign appeared. Instead, everything unfolded through ordinary actions. An intercom rings. A familiar name is spoken. A teenager goes downstairs. And she's gone. That sequence of events has remained essentially unchanged throughout decades of investigation. Many theories would emerge later. Some would involve organized conspiracies. Some would involve international politics. Some would involve Vatican-related speculation. Others would focus on entirely different possibilities. Yet all of those theories originate from the same simple event. A brief request to meet someone. A decision to answer that request. And a disappearance that has never been explained. The final confirmed chapter of Morella Gregori's life is remarkably short. A return home from school, a meeting with a friend, an intercom call, a promise to return in a few minutes. Then silence. The silence that followed would spread far beyond that apartment building. It would reach police stations, newsrooms, court records, intelligence documents, and eventually the national consciousness of Italy itself. But on the afternoon of May 7th, 1983, none of that was visible yet. At that moment, there was only a family waiting for a daughter who never came back. And somewhere beyond the last known facts, the mystery had already begun. In many criminal investigations, there is a moment when detectives discover the thread that eventually unravels the entire mystery. A witness remembers something important. A suspect makes a mistake. Physical evidence points in a clear direction. A confession fills in the missing pieces. The investigation advances. Uncertainty begins to shrink, and the story gradually moves toward resolution. The disappearance of Morella Gregori followed a very different path. From the very beginning, investigators found themselves confronting a case defined not by evidence, but by absence. The absence of witnesses, the absence of physical clues, the absence of reliable explanations, the absence of a victim. Over the decades that followed, numerous theories would emerge. Several individuals would attract attention. Anonymous callers would inject confusion into the investigation, and public speculation would grow to extraordinary levels. Yet despite all of that activity, the fundamental reality remained unchanged. Nobody could explain what happened to Morella Gregori after she left her apartment on May 7th, 1983. The investigation began with the most immediate and urgent task: finding a missing 15-year-old girl. In the earliest stages, every disappearance is treated as a race against time. Investigators attempt to establish a timeline, identify recent contacts, locate witnesses, and determine whether the missing person left voluntarily or was taken against their will. In Morella's case, those efforts immediately encountered serious difficulties. There were no signs of a struggle, no evidence that violence had occurred inside the family home, no note indicating she intended to leave, no demand for money from kidnappers, no obvious crime scene, nothing that clearly pointed investigators toward a particular suspect or motive. The situation was deeply troubling because the disappearance appeared to have occurred in broad daylight. If Morella had vanished during the middle of the night, investigators might have expected a lack of witnesses. But this was Rome in the afternoon. People were moving through the neighborhood. Businesses were operating. Residents were coming and going. Yet no reliable witness emerged with a definitive account of what had happened after she left the apartment building. This lack of information created a dangerous vacuum, one that would eventually be filled by speculation, rumors, and competing theories. At the beginning, however, investigators focused on the most obvious lead available: Alessandro. According to the known timeline, the person who contacted Morella through the intercom had identified himself using that name. If Alessandro had arranged to meet her, then perhaps he was the last person to see her. Perhaps he knew where she had gone. Perhaps he could provide the missing link investigators desperately needed. Detectives quickly moved to verify his identity and reconstruct his activities on the day of the disappearance. This is a standard investigative procedure. The final known contact of a missing person often becomes one of the most important elements of any inquiry. But as investigators examined the facts, the case took an unexpected turn. The real Alessandro possessed a clear alibi. More significantly, he reportedly had not been in contact with Morella for months before she disappeared. The evidence indicated that he was not involved. From one perspective, this was useful information because it eliminated an individual who might otherwise have remained under suspicion. Yet from another perspective, it made the mystery far more disturbing. If Alessandro had not contacted Morella, Then someone else had used his name. Someone had known enough about her life to choose an identity she would recognize. Someone had understood that using a familiar name could persuade her to leave the safety of her home. Investigators now faced an entirely new question. They were no longer trying to determine what Alessandro knew. They were trying to determine who had pretended to be him. Unfortunately, that question proved far more difficult to answer. The person behind the intercom call remained unidentified. No evidence emerged that conclusively revealed their identity. And with that, the strongest lead in the case effectively disappeared. For many investigations, the collapse of an early lead is frustrating but manageable because other evidence remains available. In the Gregory case, however, there was very little else to work with. The disappearance seemed almost impossible in its simplicity. A teenage girl had left her apartment. Then she vanished. As weeks passed, concern evolved into national attention. The case was already troubling when a second disappearance changed everything. On June 22, 1983, just 40 days after Morella vanished, another 15-year-old girl disappeared in Rome. Her name was Emanuela Orlandi. The similarities were impossible to ignore. Both girls were 15 years old. Both disappeared in the same city. Both vanished without leaving behind clear evidence. Neither was found. Suddenly, what had initially appeared to be a single mysterious disappearance now seemed potentially connected to a larger pattern. Journalists began comparing the cases. Members of the public began asking whether the same individual or group could be responsible. Investigators were forced to consider the possibility that the two disappearances might somehow be linked. Whether such a connection truly existed would become one of the most debated questions in Italian criminal history. What is certain is that public perception changed dramatically. Morella Gregori was no longer viewed solely as a missing teenager. Her case had become part of a much larger mystery. Then came the anonymous calls. Toward the end of 1983, individuals claiming knowledge of the disappearances began contacting various parties connected to the investigations. These calls would become one of the most controversial aspects of the entire case. Anonymous communications frequently present investigators with a difficult challenge. Occasionally, they contain valuable information that only an offender could know. More often, they generate confusion, misinformation, and false hope. Determining which category applies is rarely easy. In this instance, callers referred to both Morella Gregori and Emanuela Orlandi. Their statements encouraged the belief that the cases were connected. They implied knowledge of events unknown to the public. Yet they offered little that could be independently verified. Among the most famous of these mysterious figures was a man whom the media would later label the American. The nickname emerged because of the accent reportedly heard during the calls. The American made a shocking claim. He stated that Morella was dead and that her body would be returned before Christmas. For a family desperate for answers, such a statement would have been devastating. It promised certainty, even if that certainty was terrible. Yet Christmas came and went. No body was returned. No evidence appeared to support the claim. The prediction failed completely. Investigators were left wondering whether the caller possessed genuine knowledge or was merely exploiting public fear and media attention. The uncertainty surrounding these calls would persist for decades. Some observers believed they contained important clues. Others believed they were deliberate attempts to mislead authorities. No definitive conclusion was ever reached. As public fascination grew, increasingly complex theories began emerging. One of the most influential involved Mehmet Ali Agca, the man responsible for the 1981 assassination attempt against Pope John Paul II. According to this theory, Morella Gregori and Emanuela Orlandi had been kidnapped as part of a scheme designed to pressure authorities into securing Agca's release. The theory attracted significant attention for understandable reasons. It connected two mysterious disappearances to a major international event. It involved the Vatican, global politics, and terrorism. It transformed a local criminal investigation into a matter of worldwide intrigue. For journalists and commentators, the theory possessed dramatic appeal. For investigators, however, dramatic appeal was not enough. Evidence was required, and that evidence proved elusive. Despite years of discussion, investigators were unable to establish that the anonymous callers actually controlled or possessed either girl. No physical evidence connected the disappearances to an organized effort on behalf of Agca. No verifiable proof demonstrated that international terrorism was involved. Eventually, skepticism toward the theory increased. A particularly significant development occurred in 1997, when a Rome judge concluded that the alleged connection between the disappearances and international terrorism lacked a solid evidentiary basis. This did not answer the question of what happened to Morella. It simply removed one of the most widely discussed explanations. Yet the disappearance continued generating new controversies. In 1985, another development pushed the investigation toward one of its most sensitive areas: the Vatican. Morella's mother reported recognizing a member of the Pope's entourage as someone who had previously spoken with her daughter on multiple occasions before the disappearance. The individual was identified as Raul Bonarelli, a member of Vatican security. Such an allegation naturally attracted considerable attention. The Vatican already occupied a unique position within Rome, combining religious authority, international influence, and layers of institutional secrecy. Any suggestion of a possible connection instantly generated public interest. Investigators therefore examined the matter seriously. Bonarelli was questioned. His activities and statements were reviewed. Authorities attempted to determine whether any evidence connected him to the disappearance. Ultimately, however, investigators were unable to establish such a connection. No evidence emerged that implicated him in a crime. Eventually, he was removed from the list of suspects. Legally speaking, the matter appeared resolved. Publicly, however, the impact lingered. Even though Bonarelli was cleared, the association between the case and the Vatican became deeply embedded in public discussion. The disappearance increasingly existed within a world of speculation where facts and theories often coexisted uneasily. Decades later, another twist would revive interest in one of Morella's final known relationships. In 2016, journalists uncovered a document reportedly created by the Italian intelligence agency SISTA on October 31st, 1983. The report contained a statement attributed to Sonia DeVito, Morella's friend. According to the document, Sonia had allegedly told another girl, "He knows us, but we don't know him. If he took Morella, he could take me too." The statement immediately attracted attention. If accurate, it appeared to suggest fear. More importantly, it appeared to suggest awareness of an unidentified male figure. Investigators and journalists naturally asked the same questions. Who was he? What exactly did Sonia know? Why had such a statement appeared in an intelligence document? Yet once again, certainty proved impossible to achieve. The document generated discussion, but not resolution. Sonia came under renewed scrutiny, with some observers wondering whether she had withheld information from investigators. However, no evidence sufficient to support criminal charges emerged. The statement remained another intriguing but inconclusive piece of a much larger puzzle. By the early 2000s, some investigators and journalists began considering a different possibility entirely. Perhaps Morella's disappearance was not connected to political conspiracies, terrorism, or Vatican intrigue. Perhaps it was the work of a violent predator. This idea evolved into what became known as the serial killer theory. According to this hypothesis, an unidentified offender may have targeted young women in Rome during the 1980s, approaching them, gaining their trust, abducting them, and ultimately killing them. On the surface, the theory offered a simpler explanation than many of the conspiracy-driven alternatives. Yet simplicity alone does not establish truth. Investigators were unable to locate forensic evidence connecting Mirella's disappearance to a specific serial offender, nor could they definitively link her case to other disappearances. As a result, the theory remained speculative. It explained some possibilities while proving none. And so the investigation continued, year after year, moving through periods of renewed activity and disappointing dead ends. Hundreds of tips arrived over the decades. Each carried the possibility of a breakthrough. Most led nowhere. Then in 2018, another development briefly reignited hope. Human remains were discovered on property owned by the Vatican. Given the long history of speculation surrounding both the Gregory and Orlandi cases, the discovery immediately attracted attention. Families hoped that forensic testing might finally provide answers. Perhaps, after decades of uncertainty, identification would become possible. Perhaps the mystery would finally end. But the test delivered another disappointment. The remains were not identified as Mirella Gregori. Once again, a potential breakthrough dissolved. Once again, the central question remained unanswered. As the years accumulated, the investigation became remarkable not only for its duration, but also for the extraordinary range of explanations proposed. Organized crime, international terrorism, Vatican involvement, anonymous manipulators, an unidentified predator. Each theory attempted to explain the same fundamental mystery. None succeeded in conclusively doing so. Yet despite the uncertainty, one fact never changed. Mirella Gregori disappeared on May 7, 1983, after leaving her apartment to meet someone who identified himself as Alessandro. Everything that followed, the calls, the theories, the intelligence documents, the Vatican speculation, the searches, the excavations, and the decades of debate, emerged from that single unresolved event. More than 40 years later, investigators still do not know who contacted her. They do not know where she went. They do not know whether she encountered one person or several. They do not know whether the various theories intersect or contradict one another. The investigation produced countless questions, but very few answers. And that may be the defining characteristic of the Mirella Gregori case. It is not a mystery that resisted solution because evidence pointed in multiple directions. It is a mystery that resisted solution because evidence repeatedly vanished just beyond reach. Every promising lead eventually faded. Every apparent breakthrough revealed another dead end. Every attempt to impose order upon the facts ultimately collided with uncertainty. The result is a case that remains suspended between possibility and proof, between suspicion and evidence, between what might have happened and what can actually be demonstrated. More than 4 decades after Mirella walked downstairs expecting to return home in a few minutes, investigators are still searching for the missing piece that explains what happened next. Most true crime stories eventually arrive at a courtroom. The journey may be long. Investigations may take months, years, or even decades. Evidence is gathered. Suspects are identified. Prosecutors build cases. Witnesses testify. Judges issue rulings. Juries deliberate. Eventually, society receives an official answer. Perhaps not a perfect answer. Perhaps not an answer accepted by everyone. But an answer nonetheless. The disappearance of Mirella Gregori never reached that destination. There was no dramatic trial. No defendant sitting before a judge. No jury weighing competing narratives. No verdict that established what happened on the afternoon of May 7th, 1983. No legal conclusion identifying the person responsible for her disappearance. Instead, the Gregori case entered a far rarer and more unsettling category. It became a mystery that survived every investigation. A case without resolution. a disappearance without a proven perpetrator, a criminal mystery that remains suspended between possibility and proof. As the years passed, investigators pursued numerous leads. Each carried the promise of answers. Each generated public attention. And one by one, those leads either collapsed under scrutiny or failed to produce enough evidence to move forward legally. The first major example was Alessandro. From the earliest days of the investigation, his name occupied a central place in the timeline. After all, according to the known facts, Morella left her apartment because someone identifying himself as Alessandro had asked to meet her. For investigators, this appeared to be the obvious starting point. If Alessandro had been the last person to contact her, perhaps he knew what happened next. Yet the investigation produced a very different result. Authorities determined that the real Alessandro possessed a clear alibi. Furthermore, he reportedly had not communicated with Morella for months before the disappearance. These findings significantly weakened any suspicion directed toward him. Eventually, investigators concluded that he was not involved. Legally speaking, this was important. Criminal responsibility cannot be established through coincidence or public suspicion. Evidence must support the accusation. In Alessandro's case, investigators found evidence that moved them away from him rather than toward him. The result was straightforward. He was effectively eliminated as a suspect. Yet his elimination created another problem. If Alessandro was innocent, then someone else had used his identity. And that person was never conclusively identified. Thus, the investigation lost its most direct lead. The same pattern would repeat itself in later years. A new name would emerge. Public attention would intensify. Investigators would examine the evidence. And ultimately the case would return to uncertainty. One of the most notable examples involved Raul Bonarelli. The controversy emerged in 1985 when Morella's mother reported recognizing a member of the Pope's entourage as someone she believed had spoken with her daughter on several occasions before the disappearance. The individual was identified as Bonarelli, a member of Vatican security. The allegation immediately attracted widespread attention. The Vatican occupies a unique place in global affairs. Any suggestion that a Vatican official might somehow be connected to a mysterious disappearance in Rome was destined to generate enormous public interest. Yet public interest and legal evidence are not the same thing. Investigators questioned Bonarelli. His activities were examined. Authorities attempted to determine whether any objective evidence linked him to Morella's disappearance. Ultimately, they found no such evidence. No proof emerged that connected him to a crime. No witness testimony established criminal involvement. No physical evidence implicated him. As a result, he was removed from the list of suspects. From a legal perspective, that conclusion was significant. The investigation had examined the allegation and failed to support it with evidence sufficient to justify criminal proceedings. Nevertheless, public speculation persisted. For many observers, the absence of a proven connection did not eliminate curiosity. Instead, it became another chapter in the larger mythology surrounding the case. But mythology is not law, and suspicion is not proof. Without evidence, there could be no prosecution. The anonymous callers presented an even greater challenge. Throughout the years following the disappearance, various individuals claimed to possess information about Morella Gregori and Emanuela Orlandi. Some made extraordinary assertions. Some appeared to have knowledge that attracted the attention of investigators. Others seemed motivated by publicity, manipulation, or personal fascination with the case. Among these mysterious figures, none became more famous than the individual known as the American. His claim regarding Morella's death was especially dramatic. He reportedly stated that her body would be returned before Christmas. Had that prediction proven accurate, investigators might have possessed an important breakthrough. It could have demonstrated access to information unavailable to the public. It could have helped establish credibility. It could have directed investigators towards specific suspects. Instead, nothing happened. The promised body was never returned. No evidence emerged confirming the statement. No legal action resulted. Investigators were left with a difficult reality. Anonymous claims, no matter how sensational, have little value unless they can be verified. In court, evidence matters. Predictions that fail do not. The legal significance of the anonymous calls, therefore, remained limited. They generated questions, but not convictions. They produced headlines, but not verdicts. They expanded the mystery without solving it. The same challenge confronted investigators when examining one of the most famous theories associated with the disappearance: the alleged connection to Mehmet Ali Agca. For years, this theory captured international attention. According to the hypothesis, Mirella Gregori and Emanuela Orlandi had been abducted as part of an effort to pressure authorities into securing Agca's release following his attempted assassination of Pope John Paul II. The theory was dramatic. It involved international politics. It involved terrorism. It involved the Vatican. And because of those elements, it gained extraordinary visibility. Yet when viewed through a legal lens, the theory encountered serious problems. A criminal case requires evidence capable of surviving scrutiny. Investigators must demonstrate not only that a theory is possible, but that it is supported by verifiable facts. In the Gregori case, that support never materialized. Authorities were unable to prove that the anonymous callers actually possessed either girl. No physical evidence connected the disappearance to an organized terrorist operation. No documented chain of evidence established the alleged kidnapping scheme. Eventually, legal skepticism became increasingly pronounced. One of the most significant developments occurred in 1997, when a Rome judge concluded that the proposed connection between the disappearances and international terrorism lacked a solid evidentiary foundation. This did not solve the mystery. It did not identify a perpetrator, but it did establish an important legal reality. The theory that had dominated public discussion for years could not be substantiated through the available evidence. And without evidence, a courtroom could not proceed. The years continued to pass. New claims emerged. New theories appeared. Old leads were revisited. Yet the legal situation remained essentially unchanged. No prosecutor could build a complete case. No suspect could be charged successfully. No trial could establish responsibility. This distinction between public belief and legal proof is critical. In famous unsolved cases, people often ask why someone has not been arrested. The answer is frequently the same. Suspicion alone is not enough. Investigators may consider numerous possibilities. Journalists may explore countless theories. The public may develop strong opinions. But criminal prosecution requires evidence capable of meeting legal standards. In the Mirella Gregori case, that threshold was never reached. Even the intriguing SISTA document that emerged publicly in 2016 failed to alter the legal landscape. The document reportedly contained a statement attributed to Sonia DeVito. According to the report, Sonia allegedly remarked, "He knows us, but we don't know him. If he took Mirella, he could take me too." The statement immediately drew attention. Its wording appeared suggestive. Its implications seemed significant. And naturally, questions followed. Who was the unidentified? What information did Sonia possess? Had something important been overlooked? Yet once again, legal reality proved more restrictive than public speculation. The statement raised questions. It did not answer them. no evidence emerged that identified the individual referenced in the document. No criminal charges resulted. No prosecution followed. The document became another intriguing element within the larger mystery, but not a breakthrough capable of transforming the case. As the decades accumulated, the investigation acquired a strange quality. It was simultaneously one of Italy's most famous unresolved disappearances and one of its least legally developed cases. The public knew the name Mirella Gregori. Journalists discussed the mystery repeatedly. Television programs revisited the story. Books and articles examined competing theories. Yet legally, the case remained almost exactly where it had begun. A missing 15-year-old girl. An unidentified individual using the name Alessandro. No proven suspect. No proven motive. No body. No confession. No conviction. This situation placed investigators in an extraordinarily difficult position. Without physical evidence, every theory faced limitations. Without a body, establishing what happened became more challenging. Without reliable witnesses, reconstructing events became increasingly difficult. And with each passing year, memories faded. Witnesses aged. Documents became harder to locate. The passage of time itself became an obstacle. Yet despite these challenges, the case never disappeared completely. Its continued presence in public consciousness ultimately contributed to one of the most important developments in recent years. In 2023, the Italian Senate voted to establish a new investigative commission examining both the Mirella Gregori and Emanuela Orlandi disappearances. This decision carried significant symbolic weight. More than 40 years had passed since Mirella vanished. Entire generations had grown up knowing her case only as a historical mystery. And yet the Italian government still considered the matter worthy of renewed examination. The creation of the commission did not represent a legal resolution. It did not identify a culprit. It did not reveal a hidden truth. But it demonstrated something important. The search for answers had not ended. Authorities remained willing to revisit old evidence, to re-examine assumptions, to review investigative decisions made decades earlier. Such efforts reflect an uncomfortable truth about unsolved cases. Sometimes answers emerge not because new evidence appears, but because old evidence is reconsidered from a different perspective. Whether that will happen in the Gregori case remains unknown. As of 2026, however, the legal status remains remarkably simple despite decades of complexity. Mirella Gregori is still officially considered missing. No one has been convicted in connection with her disappearance. No body has been found. No court has determined what happened. No definitive explanation has achieved legal confirmation. The contrast between the enormous public attention surrounding the case and the absence of judicial conclusions is striking. For many people, famous criminal cases eventually become stories about trials, verdicts, and punishment. The Gregori case never reached that stage. Its legal history is defined less by what happened than by what never happened. There was no indictment establishing responsibility. No witness delivering the decisive testimony. No forensic discovery resolving uncertainty. No final courtroom scene bringing closure. Instead, the legal record remains dominated by unanswered questions. Who contacted Mirella on the afternoon of May 7th, 1983? Why was Alessandro's name used? What happened after she left the apartment? Were later theories connected to reality or merely distractions? And perhaps most importantly, is the truth still waiting to be discovered somewhere within the enormous volume of material accumulated over 4 decades? Those questions remain open. The courts have not answered them. Investigators have not answered them. History itself has not answered them. And so the legal outcome of the Morella Gregori case is unlike most criminal stories. There is no verdict to read, no sentence to announce, no guilty party to identify, only an unfinished file, a missing girl, and a mystery that continues to resist resolution more than 40 years after it began. The disappearance of Morella Gregori has now lasted longer than the life she had lived before she vanished. That simple fact captures the extraordinary passage of time surrounding this case. Morella was 15 years old when she disappeared on May 7, 1983. More than 4 decades have passed since then. Entire generations have grown up during the years that followed. Children born after her disappearance have become parents themselves. Governments have changed. Technologies have transformed society. The world of 1983 has largely disappeared into history. Yet one question remains exactly where it was on the afternoon Morella walked downstairs to meet someone who identified himself as Alessandro. What happened to her? The remarkable longevity of the mystery is one reason the case continues to occupy such a unique place in modern Italian history. Most criminal investigations eventually move towards some form of conclusion. Sometimes the conclusion is satisfying. Sometimes it is controversial. Sometimes it leaves lingering doubts. But there is usually an ending. The Gregori case never received one. Instead, it entered a strange state of permanence. The disappearance remained unresolved not for months or years, but for decades. As time passed, the absence of answers became one of the defining features of the story itself. For the Gregori family, the consequences of that uncertainty were impossible to measure. When a death is confirmed, grief follows a painful but recognizable path. Families mourn. Funerals are held. Lives are remembered. Loss becomes part of reality. But disappearances create a different kind of suffering. They leave families trapped between competing possibilities. Hope survives. Fear survives. Questions survive. Every unanswered phone call. Every rumor. Every reported sighting. Every new lead. Each carries the potential to alter everything. And because certainty never arrives, closure remains out of reach. The available information does not allow us to describe the private, emotional journey of Morella's family beyond what is documented. Yet the public record itself reveals enough to understand one essential truth. The search for answers never truly ended. Year after year, family members continued hoping that some piece of information would finally explain what happened. That persistence is one of the most powerful themes running through the history of the case. The investigation changed. Theories changed. Public attention rose and fell. But the desire to know the truth remained constant. The story also became inseparable from the disappearance of Emanuela Orlandi. Although the two cases remained distinct, their histories became intertwined almost immediately because of the striking similarities between them. Both girls were 15 years old. Both disappeared in Rome. Both vanished without leaving behind clear evidence. Neither was found. And both cases generated extraordinary public attention. Over time, the names Morella Gregori and Emanuela Orlandi became linked in the public imagination. For many Italians, discussing one case inevitably meant discussing the other. This connection contributed significantly to the endurance of both mysteries. Each new development in one investigation often renewed interest in the other. Each theory prompted fresh examination of both disappearances. Each anniversary reminded the public that neither case had been solved. As a result, Morella's story remained alive in national memory long after many other unsolved disappearances had faded from public consciousness. Another reason the case endured was the extraordinary range of explanations proposed over the years. Few disappearances have generated such a diverse collection of theories. Some focused on anonymous callers. Others focused on international terrorism. Some pointed toward the Vatican. Others suggested the possibility of an unidentified serial offender. Still others concentrated on specific individuals who briefly attracted investigative attention. The sheer variety of these theories reveals something important about the nature of unsolved mysteries. When evidence is limited, speculation often expands to fill the empty space. People naturally seek explanations. They search for patterns. They attempt to create order from uncertainty. Sometimes those efforts lead investigators toward important discoveries. Other times they produce confusion. The Mirella Gregori case experienced both. Theories kept the story alive, but they also demonstrated how difficult it can be to separate possibility from proof. Throughout the decades, one recurring theme appeared again and again: the tension between public suspicion and established evidence. Numerous ideas attracted widespread attention. Some seemed persuasive. Some appeared dramatic. Some connected the disappearance to larger events occurring within Italy and beyond. Yet whenever investigators attempted to move from theory to proof, they encountered the same obstacle. Evidence was missing. The real Alessandro possessed an alibi. Raul Bonarelli was investigated and ultimately cleared. The anonymous callers made claims that could not be substantiated. The Mehmet Ali Agca theory failed to achieve evidentiary support. The Sista document raised questions without providing definitive answers. The serial killer hypothesis remained unproven. Again and again, investigators found themselves confronting possibilities rather than conclusions. This distinction is essential. One of the lessons of the Gregori case is that mystery should never be mistaken for evidence. Unanswered questions are not proof. Suspicion is not proof. Coincidence is not proof. Even compelling narratives are not proof. The case demonstrates how difficult it can be to establish truth when crucial evidence is absent. It also demonstrates the importance of maintaining that distinction, no matter how emotionally unsatisfying it may feel. The discovery of human remains on Vatican property in 2018 illustrates this reality particularly well. For a brief period, hope surged. Perhaps the mystery would finally end. Perhaps forensic science would provide the answer that decades of investigation had failed to uncover. Families, journalists, and observers watched closely. But the test produced another disappointment. The remains were not identified as Mirella's. The case returned once again to uncertainty. Moments like that reveal the emotional rhythm that often defines long-term missing person investigations. Hope emerges. Expectations rise. Then reality intervenes. And the search continues. The establishment of a new investigative commission by the Italian Senate in 2023 represented another significant moment. It demonstrated that, despite the passage of more than 40 years, the disappearances of Mirella Gregori and Emanuela Orlandi continued to matter. Not merely as historical curiosities, not merely as famous mysteries, but as unresolved cases deserving renewed attention. The decision carried symbolic importance because it acknowledged something many families are missing. Persons understand deeply. Time does not eliminate the need for answers. The passing of decades does not erase questions. If anything, it often intensifies the desire to finally understand what happened. As of 2026, however, the central mystery remains intact. Mirella Gregori is still officially missing. No body has been recovered. No one has been convicted. No definitive explanation has emerged. The disappearance remains one of the largest unresolved mysteries in modern Italian history. And perhaps that is what makes the story so haunting. At its core, the case is extraordinarily simple. A 15-year-old girl returned home from school. She reportedly spent time with a friend. An intercom rang. Someone identified himself as Alessandro. Morella told her mother she would be back in a few minutes. She left. Then she vanished. Everything else came afterward. The theories, the investigations, the anonymous calls, the speculation, the intelligence documents, the Vatican connections, the political debates, the parliamentary inquiries. All of those developments emerged from a mystery whose central event lasted only a few moments. That contrast is difficult to ignore. The disappearance itself was brief. Its consequences have lasted for generations. The case also forces us to consider the vulnerability hidden within ordinary life. Nothing in the known facts suggests that May 7th, 1983 began as an extraordinary day. The available evidence points in the opposite direction. It appears to have been routine, predictable, comfortably ordinary. That normality is precisely what makes the story so unsettling. Most people imagine danger as something obvious, something dramatic, something recognizable. Yet the Gregory case reminds us that life-changing events often arrive disguised as ordinary. Moments, a conversation, a familiar name, a brief meeting, a promise to return soon. The details seem harmless until viewed through the lens of hindsight. Another enduring lesson concerns memory. As years pass, unresolved cases often become battlegrounds between competing narratives. Different groups emphasize different theories. Certain details acquire symbolic importance. Speculation sometimes overshadows established facts. In such circumstances, it becomes important to remember what is actually known. Morella Gregory existed before the mystery. She was not merely the subject of an investigation. She was not merely a name in a police file. She was a teenager with friends, family, routines, and a future that should have unfolded naturally. The unresolved nature of the case can sometimes obscure that reality. Yet it remains the most important fact of all. The purpose of seeking answers is not simply to solve a puzzle. It is to understand what happened to a human being. That distinction matters, especially in cases that have generated decades of public fascination. There's also a broader social significance to mysteries like this one. Unsolved disappearances challenge institutions. They challenge investigators. They challenge legal systems. They challenge public assumptions about safety and certainty. They remind us that even in densely populated cities, people can disappear without explanation. They remind us that some crimes resist resolution despite enormous effort. And they remind us that justice is not guaranteed simply because a case receives attention. Some mysteries endure. Some questions survive generations. The disappearance of Morella Gregory belongs to that category. Today, her story occupies a unique position within Italian history. It exists simultaneously as a criminal investigation, a cultural memory, and a symbol of unanswered questions. For older generations, it recalls the fears and controversies of the 1980s. For younger generations, it represents a mystery inherited from the past. For investigators, it remains an unfinished case. For a family, it represents something far more personal. A daughter who never came home. Perhaps the most honest conclusion is also the simplest. After more than 40 years, we still do not know what happened after Morella Gregory left her apartment building on the afternoon of May 7th, 1983. We do not know who contacted her. We do not know where she went. We do not know whether any of the major theories contain part of the truth. We do not know whether the answer remains hidden within forgotten documents overlooked testimony, or evidence yet to be discovered. Those uncertainties remain. And until they are resolved, the story continues. Not because of sensational theories, not because of rumors, not because of conspiracy, but because a 15-year-old girl disappeared and the truth about her fate has never been found. That is the heart of the mystery. That is the tragedy. And more than 4 decades later, it is the reason the name Mirella Gregori is still remembered. There's a point in every unsolved case where the investigation stops being measured in days, months, or even years. It begins to be measured in generations. The disappearance of Mirella Gregori crossed that threshold long ago. What began as an urgent search for a missing 15-year-old girl gradually became something larger. A mystery inherited by people who were not even born when she vanished. Investigators changed. Journalists changed. Political leaders changed. Entire institutions evolved. Yet the central question remained untouched by time. On the afternoon of May 7th, 1983, Mirella Gregori left her home after receiving a request to meet someone who identified himself as Alessandro. She told her mother she would return in a few minutes. She never did. More than 4 decades later, those few known facts continue to form the foundation of one of Italy's most enduring mysteries. The extraordinary longevity of the case has created an unusual situation. Most criminal investigations eventually become history because their outcomes are known. Names are attached to crimes. Motives are identified. Timelines are completed. Even controversial cases usually arrive at some official conclusion. The Gregori case remains suspended between past and present because the ending was never written. Every new generation encounters the story in essentially the same form. A disappearance, a handful of verified facts, a collection of theories, and a truth that remains hidden. One reason the mystery continues to attract attention is because it appears to challenge common assumptions about how disappearances occur. People often imagine that major crimes leave behind dramatic evidence. Witnesses observe something suspicious. Physical traces point investigators toward suspect. A clear chain of events eventually emerges. In Mirella's case, the opposite occurred. The event itself was remarkably ordinary. A teenager answered an intercom call. A familiar name was used. She went downstairs. Then the trail ended. The simplicity of that sequence makes the mystery uniquely unsettling. It suggests that life-changing events do not always announce themselves. Sometimes they emerge from situations so routine that nobody recognizes the danger until it is too late. Throughout the years, the case accumulated layer upon layer of speculation. Anonymous callers inserted themselves into the story. Connections were proposed between Mirella Gregori and Emanuela Orlandi. International terrorism theories gained attention. Allegations involving individuals connected to the Vatican entered public discussion. Intelligence documents generated fresh questions. New searches produced renewed hope. Yet when all of these developments are stripped away, the mystery remains surprisingly unchanged. The core problem has always been the same. There is no definitive evidence explaining what happened after Mirella left her apartment building. The passage of time has given the case an almost symbolic quality within Italian society. It is frequently discussed not merely because of the disappearance itself, but because it represents the persistence of uncertainty. Modern societies often place enormous confidence in investigative techniques, forensic science, and institutional resources. The Gregori case serves as a reminder that some mysteries survive despite all of those tools. Evidence can be lost. Opportunities can disappear. Critical information can remain hidden. Sometimes a case remains unresolved, not because people stop searching, but because the decisive piece of information never emerges. This reality is difficult to accept. Human beings naturally seek conclusions. We want stories to end. We want questions to have answers. We want uncertainty to be replaced by understanding. Unsolved disappearances deny us that comfort. They leave behind empty spaces that theories attempt to fill but never completely occupy. In the Gregory case, every major explanation has encountered the same obstacle. The available evidence has never been sufficient to transform possibility into certainty. As a result, the mystery remains open. Another reason the case continues to resonate is because of the age of the victim. Mirella Gregory was 15 years old. She stood at the beginning of her life rather than near the end of it. Every future possibility still lay ahead. Education, adulthood, relationships, ambitions, achievements, disappointments, successes, all of those experiences belong to a future that should have unfolded naturally. Instead, history remembers her because that future suddenly disappeared from view. In many ways, unresolved disappearances create two parallel stories. The first is the story that actually happened, the one investigators have spent decades attempting to reconstruct. The second is the story that never happened, the life that might have been lived if the disappearance had never occurred. The first story remains unknown. The second remains forever incomplete. Together, they create the enduring sadness that surrounds cases like this one. The establishment of renewed investigations and official reviews demonstrates that the search for answers has never entirely ended. Even after decades, authorities continue revisiting evidence, examining old assumptions, and reviewing the historical record. Whether those efforts will eventually produce a breakthrough remains impossible to predict. What can be said with certainty is that the disappearance continues to matter. It matters because unresolved cases challenge the idea that every mystery eventually yields an answer. It matters because families deserve truth. It matters because understanding what happened to a missing person is not merely an investigative, objective, but a human one. The Gregory case also illustrates the importance of distinguishing between what is known and what is suspected. Over the years, countless theories have emerged. Some have appeared plausible. Some have attracted enormous media attention. Some have become deeply embedded in public memory. Yet the absence of definitive proof remains one of the most important facts in the entire story. Responsible investigation requires patience with uncertainty. It requires acknowledging the difference between evidence and speculation. And in this case, uncertainty continues to dominate the landscape. As of 2026, the official status remains unchanged. Mirella Gregory is still considered missing. No body has been found. No one has been convicted. No definitive explanation has been established. The mystery remains exactly that, a mystery. There is no dramatic final revelation waiting at the end of this narrative. No courtroom confession. No solved puzzle. No confirmed perpetrator. There is only the enduring reality of an unanswered question that has survived more than 40 years. And perhaps that is why the case continues to fascinate and disturb so many people. The story begins with a few ordinary minutes, a familiar voice on an intercom, a brief promise to return, a teenager stepping outside. Most people would not remember such a moment. Most people would never imagine it becoming historically significant. Yet those few minutes became the dividing line between an ordinary life and one of the greatest unresolved disappearance cases in modern Italian history. Somewhere beyond the last confirmed facts, the truth exists. Whether it survives in forgotten memories, undiscovered evidence, or information that has never reached investigators, nobody knows. What is known is far simpler. A girl named Mirella Gregory left home on a spring afternoon in Rome. Her family expected her back within minutes. More than 4 decades later, they and the world are still waiting for an answer.